The Valorian Dominion had watched Earth for 50 years. Their ships hid behind the moon. Their sensors recorded everything. They saw humans fight each other over land, over beliefs, over resources. They saw nations point weapons at other nations. They saw a world divided into hundreds of pieces, always arguing, always competing. High Arbiter Cale Vaughn read the final report in his command chamber. His gray skin glowed softly under the blue lights of his ship. His 4 eyes scanned the data with growing confidence. "They are primitives," he said to his council. "They have not even left their own solar system. They fight among themselves like animals. They pose no threat to the Dominion." The Dominion had conquered 300 worlds across 3 galactic arms. No species had ever defeated them. Most surrendered before the first shot was fired. The few who resisted were erased from existence within days. The Valorians had forgotten what it felt like to face a real enemy. "The Sol system has resources we need," Cale Vaughn continued. "The third planet has water, metals, and organic material. I recommend immediate cleansing." No one on the council objected. Why would they? This was routine. They had done it dozens of times before. The humans would run, or they would die. Either way, the Dominion would take what it wanted. On Earth, it was a Tuesday morning. Children walked to school, people drove to work, coffee shops filled with customers. The sun rose over cities that had stood for centuries. No one looked up at the sky. No one had any reason to. The first rod hit New York at 8:47 a.m. local time. It was not a bomb. It was simply a metal rod, dropped from orbit at tremendous speed. The impact carried the force of a nuclear weapon without the radiation. One moment, the city existed. The next moment, there was only a crater filled with fire and dust. More rods fell. London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, Paris, Mumbai, Sydney, Cairo, 147 cities across the world struck within the same hour. The Valorians had calculated everything perfectly. They knew where the humans gathered. They knew where the governments operated. They knew how to break a civilization in a single morning. 4 billion people died before lunch. The survivors crawled from the ruins. They emerged from subway tunnels and basement shelters. They stumbled through streets covered in ash and debris. They looked for family members they would never find. They screamed into phones that no longer worked. Then the message came. Every radio, every television, every device that still functioned played the same recording. The Valorian language had been translated into every human tongue. The voice was calm and cold. "People of Earth, the Valorian Dominion has claimed your solar system. Your planet is now Dominion territory. You have 1 solar cycle to evacuate. Any humans remaining after this period will be eliminated. This is not a negotiation. This is mercy. Do not test our patience." The message repeated. It played again and again, echoing through the burning cities and the empty fields. It played over the bodies of the dead and the tears of the living. Governments had been destroyed, military bases had been targeted, communication networks had collapsed. For 3 days, humanity existed in chaos. People wandered without direction. Gangs formed and fought over food and water. Some simply gave up and waited to die. But on the 4th day, something changed. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was 67 years old. She had retired from the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force 5 years earlier. She had been visiting her grandchildren in Osaka when the rods fell. The city was gone. Her grandchildren were gone. Her daughter was gone. She walked for 2 days to reach a surviving military outpost. She took command without asking permission. No one questioned her. Her eyes held something that made people obey. Similar scenes played out across the world. Survivors found each other. Soldiers who had lost their units joined new groups. Scientists who had lost their laboratories built new ones in caves and bunkers. Engineers who had lost their factories started building with whatever materials they could find. In the ruins of Geneva, Representatives from 32 surviving nations gathered in what remained of the United Nations building. The roof was gone, the walls were cracked, but the people inside were not broken. "They expect us to run," Admiral Tanaka said. She had walked for 6 days to reach this meeting. Her uniform was torn. Her face was covered in dust, but her voice was strong. "They expect us to beg," she continued. "They expect us to scatter across the stars as refugees, weak and grateful for whatever scraps they allow us." She looked around the room. She saw presidents and generals, scientists and farmers, people from every nation and every background. She saw pain in their eyes. She saw loss. But she also saw something else. She saw anger. "I lost my family," she said. "Many of you lost yours. We have all lost something that can never be returned. But we have not lost everything. We still have our minds. We still have our hands. We still have each other." She placed her palm on the broken table. "They gave us 1 year. They think that is a death sentence. They think we will spend that year crying and running and dying." A small smile crossed her face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Let us show them what humanity can build when it has nothing left to fear." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, every person in that room stood. They did not cheer. They did not applaud. They simply stood, united for the first time in human history. The Terran Unified Command was born in that moment. And the Valorians, watching from their ships behind the moon, had no idea what they had just created. They had wanted to kill a planet. Instead, they had awakened a species. The Valorians waited for surrender. They waited for refugee ships begging for mercy. They waited for the broken cries of a dying species. Instead, they received silence. Earth went dark. No radio signals, no television broadcasts, no communication of any kind. The planet that had once been so loud, so busy, so full of noise, became completely quiet. High Arbiter Cale Vaughn sent scout ships to investigate. The first scout entered Earth's atmosphere and never returned. The second scout followed the same path and also vanished. The third scout stayed higher, trying to observe from a safe distance. Its sensors showed nothing unusual. Just a wounded planet covered in ash and ruin. "They are hiding," Cale Vaughn told his council, "like animals in a cave. They will starve within a generation. There is nothing to fear." The council believed him. Why would they not? Every species in history had reacted the same way to Dominion attacks. Some ran, some begged, some fought briefly before dying. None had ever gone silent. But the silence was not surrender. The silence was preparation. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, humanity was transforming itself. The Terran Unified Command had divided the planet into sectors. Each sector had a specific purpose. Some sectors focused on food production, growing crops in underground farms lit by artificial sunlight. Some sectors focused on manufacturing, building tools and machines from the wreckage of the old world. Some sectors focused on research, studying the pieces of Valorian technology that had fallen during the bombardment. Admiral Tanaka oversaw everything from a command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps. She slept 4 hours a night. She ate the same rations as everyone else. She read every report, attended every meeting, and made every difficult decision. "We cannot defeat them with what we have," she told her senior staff. "We need their technology. We need to understand how they travel between stars." Dr. Elena Vasquez was a physicist from Argentina. She had lost her husband and 3 children in the bombardment. She had not smiled since that day, but her mind was sharper than ever, fueled by a cold rage that never faded. She led the team that studied Valorian faster-than-light technology. The aliens used a method that bent space around their ships, creating a bubble that moved faster than light, while the ship inside remained stationary. It was elegant, and safe. "We cannot copy their method," Vasquez reported after 3 years of research. "We do not have the materials or the manufacturing capability, but I have found another way." Her method was different. It did not bend space. It punched through it. It was like the difference between walking around a mountain and blowing a tunnel straight through. Her method was faster, cheaper, and required materials that humans could actually produce. It also had a 12% chance of catastrophic failure. Every jump through space had a 1 in 8 chance of killing everyone on board. Admiral Tanaka looked at the numbers for a long time. Then she looked at Vasquez. "Will people volunteer for this?" Vasquez did not hesitate. "I will be first." The first human FTL test occurred in year 4. The ship was small, carrying only Vasquez and 2 other scientists. They jumped from Earth orbit to the orbit of Mars in less than a second. They survived. The second test also succeeded. So did the third. The 4th ship vanished. Its crew lost forever in the space between spaces. Vasquez recorded their names in a book she carried everywhere. She added more names as the years passed. The book grew thick, but the ships kept jumping, and the shipyards kept building. Commander Marcus Cole had been a Special Forces soldier in the American military. He was one of the few who had survived the destruction of Washington. He had walked out of the ruins carrying 2 children he had found in the rubble. Both children grew up to become soldiers under his command. Cole trained the new Terran military. He threw away every old manual, every old tactic, every old assumption. The enemy was not human. The enemy did not think like humans. The old ways of fighting would not work. "The Valorians have never faced resistance," he told his recruits. "They are used to enemies who surrender or die quickly. They do not know what guerrilla warfare is. They do not understand sabotage. They do not know how to fight someone who does not care about survival." He paused and looked at the young faces before him. They were children when the sky burned. They had grown up underground, eating recycled food, breathing filtered air, learning to hate an enemy they had never seen. "We are going to teach them," he said. The Psychological Warfare Division developed mental conditioning techniques. Valorians had limited telepathic abilities. They could sense strong emotions and sometimes read surface thoughts. Human scientists created training methods that allowed soldiers to hide their true intentions behind false emotional signals. A soldier could smile while planning murder. The Intelligence Division studied Valorian society. They learned that the Dominion had conquered through fear and overwhelming force for over 1,000 years. They learned that Valorian commanders had no experience with prolonged conflict. They learned that the Dominion economy depended on the assumption that wars were quick and cheap. 10 years passed. The Valorians grew bored with watching a silent planet. They reduced their surveillance. They moved their attention to other conquests. Earth became a minor note in their records, a problem that would solve itself through starvation and time. They did not know about the 200 warships hidden in the ocean trenches. They did not know about the weapons factories churning out missiles and bombs around the clock. They did not know about the army of soldiers who had trained their entire adult lives for a war of revenge. On the 10th anniversary of the bombardment, Admiral Tanaka stood before her command staff. She was 77 years old now. Her hair had turned completely white. Her face was lined with years of grief and exhaustion, but her eyes were bright, burning with a fire that had never dimmed. "Today we remember what we lost," she said. "Tomorrow we begin taking it back." She pressed a button on her console. Across the planet, hidden doors opened. Ships rose from the depths of the oceans. Soldiers marched to their stations. Engines roared to life. "Operation Reciprocity begins now," she announced. "May God have mercy on them, because we will not." The silent decade was over. The war had begun. The first attack came without warning. Governor Thelvan was eating his morning meal when alarms screamed through his administrative building. He rushed to the window and saw fire falling from the sky. Human missiles, primitive but effective, struck the fuel depot at the edge of the city. The explosion could be seen from orbit. Before Thelvan could issue orders, the attackers were gone. They had jumped into the system, fired their weapons, and jumped away in less than 3 minutes. The Valorian defense fleet arrived to find nothing but burning wreckage and confusion. The same thing happened in 16 other systems that day. Supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations, minor targets, but important ones. The damage was small compared to the vastness of the Dominion, but the message was clear. Admiral Tanaka's voice broadcast across Valorian space, transmitted on frequencies the Dominion had thought were secure. "We remember every name, we have counted every death, and we are coming." High Arbiter Kael Vaughn responded with fury. He ordered his fleets to hunt down the human ships. He promised rewards for their destruction. He declared that Earth would be completely sterilized, every living thing burned away. His fleets found nothing. The humans attacked and vanished. They never stayed to fight a direct battle. They never gave the Dominion a target to destroy. Captain Amara Okonkwo commanded the warship Lazarus. She had been 17 years old on the day of the bombardment. She had been at school in Lagos when the rod struck the city. She had survived only because her school was built over an old bomb shelter from a forgotten war. She had spent 3 days in darkness, listening to the screams above, before rescue teams found her. Now she was 28 years old and one of the deadliest ship captains in the Terran fleet. The Lazarus earned its name through survival. The ship had fought in 12 major engagements. It had been hit by missiles, raked by energy weapons, and left for dead more than once. Each time, somehow, the crew kept it flying. They patched holes with whatever materials they had. They rerouted damaged systems. They refused to die. Before every battle, Captain Okonkwo gathered her crew for a ritual. They read names aloud, names of people they had lost in the bombardment, names of friends and family who had died in the 10 years of preparation, names of fellow soldiers who had fallen in the war. The reading took hours. The crew stood in silence, listening to each name. When the reading was finished, they went to their stations and fought. They fought with a cold fury that terrified their enemies. The Valorians did not understand. Their culture valued survival above all else. They could not comprehend soldiers who welcomed death if it meant taking enemies with them. They could not predict tactics from commanders who had already accepted that they would not survive the war. Human strategies exploited this confusion. They targeted food production facilities on agricultural worlds. The Dominion, which had never worried about feeding its population, suddenly faced the possibility of famine. Military ships had to be diverted to protect farming worlds. Supply lines stretched thin. Human assassins infiltrated Dominion worlds. They learned to mimic Valorian behavior well enough to pass basic inspection. They killed governors and generals, then disappeared before anyone knew what had happened. The Dominion leadership became paranoid. They trusted no one. They saw human agents everywhere. Human engineers seeded hyperspace routes with mines. FTL travel, once completely safe within Dominion space, became a gamble. Ships vanished without explanation. Captains became afraid to jump. Trade slowed. The economy that had powered the Dominion for 1,000 years began to crack. 5 years into the war, the Dominion attempted negotiation. They sent a diplomatic ship to Earth with offers of peace. They would leave humanity alone. They would even return some of the resources they had taken. All they wanted was for the attacks to stop. Admiral Tanaka met the diplomatic ship personally. She listened to their offers without expression. When they finished speaking, she nodded once. "I understand your terms," she said. "Here is my response." 30 human ships jumped into the system where the Dominion's oldest colony world orbited. They did not attack the colony itself. They did not kill civilians. Instead, they used precision weapons to carve a message into the planet's surface. The letters were kilometers wide, visible from space. "You don't get to choose when this ends." The diplomats returned home with nothing. High Arbiter Kale Vaughn raged and threatened. He promised the complete destruction of humanity. He swore that every human would die screaming. But his words carried less weight than before. The other species in the Dominion, those who had surrendered long ago and accepted Valorian rule, watched the war with growing interest. They whispered to each other in secret. The humans were winning, not through superior numbers or technology. They were winning because they simply refused to stop. They were winning because they had nothing to lose and everything to avenge. On worlds that had submitted peacefully for centuries, people began to ask dangerous questions. If the humans could resist, why had they surrendered so easily? If the Dominion could bleed, was it truly invincible? Seeds of rebellion began to sprout, and the Ghost War continued. Captain Okonkwo added more names to her list. The Lazarus took more damage and kept flying. Somewhere in a bunker beneath Earth, Admiral Tanaka studied reports and planned the next phase of the war. The humans had hurt the Dominion. They had proven it could be wounded, but wounds could heal. To truly end this, they would need to do much more. They would need to break the Dominion completely, and they were just getting started. 20 years after the bombardment, humanity counted its losses. Half of the survivors from the first attack were now dead. The war had consumed them. Ships that launched with crews of hundreds returned with dozens. Sometimes they did not return at all. Families had been torn apart again and again. Children grew up knowing their parents only through photographs and stories. The underground cities of Earth were crowded with refugees and orphans. Food was rationed carefully. Clean water was a luxury. The factories ran day and night, producing weapons and ships that were immediately sent into battle. Everyone worked. Everyone sacrificed. There was no other choice. Admiral Tanaka was 87 years old. Her body was failing. Her doctors told her she needed rest. She ignored them. She had rested enough for one lifetime. She would rest when the war was over. Commander Marcus Cole stood beside her in the command center. He was 60 now. His once black hair turned gray, his face marked with scars from battles he barely remembered. His 2 adopted children had both died in the war, one in a ship explosion, one in a ground assault on a Valorian outpost. He carried their photographs in his pocket. "The latest intelligence reports are troubling," he said. "The Dominion is gathering its remaining fleets. They are pulling ships from every sector, every colony, every outpost." Tanaka studied the holographic display before her. Red dots representing Valorian ships were converging on a single point. The pattern was unmistakable. "They are coming here," she said. "They are coming to Earth." Cole nodded. "High Arbiter Kale Vaughn has staked his political survival on ending this war. The other Valorian leaders are losing faith in him. If he does not destroy us soon, they will remove him from power. So he is betting everything on one attack." Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. Desperate men make mistakes. The Dominion assembled the largest fleet in its history. 800 warships, carrying millions of soldiers, armed with enough firepower to crack a planet in half. It was overwhelming force, the same strategy that had worked for the Valorians for 1,000 years. But humans had been preparing for this moment since the war began. Earth's orbit was filled with debris from the bombardment, from destroyed satellites and shattered space stations. Over 20 years, human engineers had secretly turned this debris into weapons. Chunks of metal hid explosive charges. Floating wreckage concealed sensor arrays and missile launchers. What looked like a graveyard was actually a fortress. The lunar surface, scarred and gray, held automated defense platforms that could strike ships before they entered Earth's orbit. Beneath the oceans, submarines waited with missiles that could reach space. Every human who could hold a weapon was ready to fight. The Valorian fleet arrived on a cold morning in March. They jumped into the outer solar system and began their advance toward Earth. Their commanders expected a quick victory. They expected the primitive humans to crumble before superior numbers and technology. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 days. The first wave of Valorian ships entered the debris field around Earth. Hidden weapons activated. Explosions tore through their formation. Ships that had expected to fire on helpless targets found themselves caught in a storm of missiles and railgun fire. Admiral Tanaka commanded the defense from a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Her voice remained calm as she issued orders. Her hands were steady as she moved pieces across the tactical display. "Hold the debris field as long as possible," she instructed her fleet commanders. "Make them pay for every kilometer." The human fleet was outnumbered 20-1. They could not win a direct confrontation. Instead, they fought like ghosts, striking from cover, retreating before the enemy could respond, drawing the Valorians deeper into the killing zone. Lieutenant Sarah Cole commanded the battleship Prometheus. She was 30 years old, the daughter of Marcus Cole, trained from childhood to be a warrior. Her father had not wanted her to join the military. She had ignored his wishes. She understood that some things were more important than family. The Prometheus was an old ship, one of the first built after the bombardment. Its hull was patched and scarred from dozens of battles. Its systems were outdated compared to newer vessels, but its crew was experienced and its captain was fearless. On the 15th day of the battle, the Prometheus was hit by 3 missiles simultaneously. The engine room was destroyed, life support was failing, half the crew was dead or wounded. Sarah Cole surveyed the damage reports. The ship could not escape. It could not fight effectively, but it could still move. She opened a channel to her father's command center. "Dad," she said. Her voice was calm. "I want you to know that I am proud to be your daughter." Marcus Cole stared at the screen. He understood immediately what she was planning. "Sarah, don't... Tell Mom I love her. Tell everyone that I did my duty." She cut the channel before he could respond. Then she turned to her surviving crew. "Anyone who wants to leave, get to the escape pods now. No shame in it. We have all done enough." No one moved. They looked at her with eyes that held no fear, only acceptance. They had all lost people in this war. They had all accepted that they might not survive. Today was simply the day. Sarah Cole smiled. It was a real smile, the first one she had worn in years. "Then let's make it count." The Prometheus accelerated toward the Valorian command carrier. Enemy weapons fire struck the ship again and again. Sections exploded and broke away. The hull screamed as it tore apart. Still, the ship kept moving. Sarah broadcast on all frequencies, her voice reaching both human and Valorian listeners. "For Earth, for everyone we lost, see you in hell." The Prometheus struck the command carrier at full speed. The explosion was visible from the surface of Earth. When the light faded, both ships were gone. High Arbiter Cale Vaughn was on that carrier. Without their leader, without their command ship, the Valorian fleet lost coordination. Human ships pressed the attack, exploiting the confusion. After 3 more days of fighting, the Dominion fleet broke. For the first time in their history, the Valorians retreated from a battle they had started. Admiral Tanaka watched the enemy ships flee. She felt no joy, only exhaustion, and a grim satisfaction that the price of victory paid in so many lives had been worth it. The war was not over, but the ending was near. The survivors of the Dominion fleet limped home. Their ships were damaged. Their morale was shattered. Their leader was dead, vaporized in the explosion that had destroyed his command carrier. They expected to find safety on their homeworld. They expected to regroup and plan their next move. Instead, they found human ships already waiting in orbit. Admiral Tanaka had planned this moment for 20 years. While the Dominion had gathered every available ship for the assault on Earth, she had hidden a reserve fleet, 50 warships, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never see home again, had waited in deep space for the signal. When the Battle of Sol began, the reserve fleet jumped to the Valorian homeworld. They arrived to find a planet almost completely undefended. The mighty Dominion had committed everything to destroying Earth. They had left nothing to protect themselves. The human ships did not attack. They did not fire weapons. They simply took position in orbit and waited. They wanted witnesses. They wanted the Valorians to understand what was about to happen. Admiral Tanaka arrived 3 days after the Battle of Sol ended. Her ship, the Remembrance, was old and slow. She could have sent a recorded message. She could have let younger officers handle this moment. But she had started this war. She would end it personally. She stood on the bridge of her ship, looking down at the Valorian homeworld. It was a beautiful planet. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across the atmosphere. Billions of people lived there, families, children, people who had never held a weapon. For a long moment, she was silent. Dr. Vasquez stood beside her, the physicist who had made faster-than-light travel possible. Commander Cole was there as well, his face carved with grief for his daughter. Captain Okonkwo watched from her ship, the Lazarus, somehow still flying after all these years. "We could end them," Vasquez said quietly. "We have the weapons. We have the position. One order from you, and this planet becomes what Earth became." Tanaka did not respond immediately. She thought about her grandchildren, vaporized in the first attack. She thought about the 4 billion names carved into the memorial walls underground. She thought about 20 years of sacrifice, of death, of rage that had kept her alive when her body wanted to surrender. "Yes," she finally said. "We could." She turned away from the viewport. "But we will not." The broadcast began moments later. Every communication device on the Valorian homeworld received the signal. Every ship in orbit heard her voice. Every surviving leader of the Dominion listened as Admiral Yuki Tanaka delivered humanity's final message. 30 years ago, you looked at our world and saw pests to be cleared. You did not warn us. You did not negotiate. You did not give us a chance to surrender. You simply killed 4 billion people and told the survivors to run." Her voice was tired. It carried the weight of decades and the ghost of everyone she had lost. You burned our children while they slept. You erased our cities, our history, our art, our future. You called it mercy. You expected us to scatter and die like animals. She paused. The Valorian leaders watched in silence, waiting for the killing blow they were certain would come. "You were wrong about us. We could destroy you now. Every human who survived has lost someone to your mercy. There is not a single person among us who would object to your extinction. You have earned annihilation 1,000 times over." She looked at the planet below, so fragile, so vulnerable, just as Earth had been 30 years ago. "But we are not you. Here are our terms. The Dominion is dissolved. Your conquered peoples go free. Your military is dismantled. Every weapon is destroyed. Every warship is scrapped. And you will build a monument. On this world, in your capital city, you will construct a wall. A black wall stretching as far as necessary. On that wall, you will carve every human name your bombardment erased. All 4 billion of them. You will teach your children what you did. You will teach their children. You will remember until the stars go dark." The Valorian Council listened without interruption. They had expected demands. They had expected cruelty. They had not expected this. "You started this fight," Tanaka continued. "You chose blood and fire and called it mercy. We did not want this war. We did not start this war, but we finished it." She straightened her shoulders. Her voice grew stronger. "This is humanity's final message to you. We protect our own. We remember our dead. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And if you ever threaten our home again, there will be no one left to send a message to." The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Valorian Council sent their response. A single word, broadcast on all frequencies. Accepted. The war was over. Within a year, the Dominion was gone. 300 worlds that had been conquered over 1,000 years declared independence. Species that had submitted in fear now walked free. The galaxy reshaped itself around the absence of the empire that had ruled it for so long. On the Valorian homeworld, construction began on the memorial wall. It took 50 years to complete. The wall stretched across an entire continent, black stone covered with names in letters small enough that visitors had to lean close to read them. 4 billion names. 4 billion lives that had been erased and were now remembered. Human children visited the memorial. They left flowers for great-grandparents they had never known. They traced the letters with their fingers and tried to imagine the world that had existed before the fire. Admiral Tanaka did not live to see the wall completed. She died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93. Her last words were the names of her grandchildren. Dr. Vasquez returned to science. She spent her remaining years developing technologies that would help rebuild Earth's surface. The planet slowly healed. Forests grew where cities had stood. Life returned. Commander Cole never stopped grieving for his daughter, but he found purpose in training the next generation of soldiers. Not for war, but for peace. Someone had to protect what humanity had won. Captain Okonkwo finally retired the Lazarus. The ship was placed in a museum, its patches and scars preserved as a monument to everyone who had served on it. She visited every year on the anniversary of the bombardment and read the names of her lost crew aloud. Across the galaxy, species that had never known freedom began to build their own futures. Some struggled, some thrived. All of them remembered the lesson that humanity had taught. A new proverb spread among the stars, passed from world to world, from generation to generation. Never start a war with Earth. They do not know how to lose. They only know how to end things. And on a blue-green planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humanity looked up at the sky without fear. They had delivered their message. They had kept their promise. The fight was over. The ending had been delivered, and they had won.